Hello and welcome to the Last Word on Spurs. We are, of course, your multi-award winning Tottenham Hotspur podcast. We are back. It's our midweek edition of the show. And like I said to the guys in the green room joking, we're trying to look forward. I wish Spurs could do the same. If it was the first time, you can find us on iTunes, we're on Spotify, we're across all major audio platforms. We've got three tremendous returning regular guests, three fellow suffering Spurs fans that are going to try and help us move forward in the crazy world that is Tottenham Hotspur. And they forgive me, they tell me, for bringing them back into it for even more. Alongside me, looking fresh-faced and, of course, a long way away, but in his true heart, he's never really that far away. TJ Ramini's back on the show. Tej, happy to have you back here, mate. You're smiling. Just about, Tej. How are you?
How could I not smile with such a lovely introduction? I mean, listen, give me an opportunity to smile about something before we start talking about the state of our football club. Lovely to be back on the show. I've been saying this an awful lot recently. We'll do our very best for you, viewers and listeners. You know, we'll do our very best. We'll be honest and we'll try to give accurate appraisal. And let's see what we can do for each other. We need each other right now, gang. So, you know, we'll do our very best. Thank you for tuning in. Lovely to be on the show with the chaps. And let's see if we can put some smiles on faces.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. One man that we always love hearing his views, of course. We try and bring him on whenever we can. He's home and away. Not like the programme. I bet he wishes he was home and away, though. We've got the superb George Achiilea back on. George, lovely to have you here, mate. How are you? It's the show post-Arsenal. A few more days on. We're a little bit more calmer now, I think.
Yeah, if I actually was on home and away, I'd be miles away from Spurs. So that'd be great. But no, I'm good, mate. Look, everything in life apart from Spurs is going great at the moment. So I can't complain on that front. But yes, it's going to be a lot more therapy sort of session again, as it seems to be a lot lately. But no, I'm happy to dive into it. Thank you again for having me back on the show and look forward to dissecting it all with the people watching, listening, and you guys here as well.
Gee, you're a star. Love to be back on. And also back on the show. I said to him when he made his debut, I said, I'll give you a bit of time, at least a month before I bring you back into this. But I absolutely failed on that. And it's my pleasure to welcome back on the show. Whenever you hear him on the Echo of Glory pod, I'm always on the way thinking, yep. I agree with every word he says. We've got the superb Adam Nathan returning. I'd love it to have you here. And I have to let listeners into a secret. For those that haven't listened or watched Echo of Glory, they should. But I think it's your second Spurs therapy session of the day. So, Ads, after this, you may very well be tuned out.
Well, it was Monday, our show. Monday. So I've had sort of 36 hours to re-stew and re-marinate and sort of re-simmer on everything like that. But no, it's always a pleasure to be on. And, you know, sometimes, they say, a problem shared is a problem halved, maybe quartered. I hope so, because it really is getting quite problematic, all of this stuff. Look, it's good to be the only Adam on the show this time, because at least this time you've only got to call one of us Adam or Ad to make your life a lot easier than last time. So, we've got rid of Hotspur, and now we can have a real show.
I joked that a few weeks ago. We said at the time, I said, that's the last of our worries, trying to do two Adams on the show. And it actually proved more difficult than I thought it was our relegation battle. But subsequently, since then, the last couple of weeks, it feels like it's got even more serious in the Spurs sphere. So it's lovely to be back on the show, mate. And like I say, it's really testing times right now. Like I say, we'll be looking ahead if we can to what Fulham may look like for Spurs. Of course, later towards the end of the week, in terms of when it is Sunday now, forgive me, it feels it's a difficult time around Tottenham in general. We'll be discussing how concerned are we by the imminent threat of relegation, which feels even more likelier kind of game by game, and how generally we are concerned about the teams that are around us. That's not all. I mean, there's been obviously some concerns around some of the players, their attitudes, their mentality. I think we saw Igor Tudor on the touchline at the weekend with an admittance really that he feels there's a lot of bad habits that have been picked up from the players, but still feels there's quality there. I don't want to go too far into Arsenal, but before I do, guys out there, if you can, as always, like, hype, subscribe to the show. That would be greatly appreciated. I mean, George, we're open with you because Igor Tudor, I mean, he was given a brutal introduction into life in the Premier League and at Spurs on Sunday. Of course, that 4-1 defeat at home to Arsenal. I still can't believe I'm saying that for the second time this season. And bearing in mind, this was a manager beforehand. I think when you looked at his overall record as a manager coming into the Premier League, I think he won every game during temporary charges so far. So he was brought crashing down to life. And Spurs, I mean, look, they finished the Premier League weekend going into this week with winning the fewest points and the only side without a league win in 2026. So George, how concerned are you by the plight of Tottenham at this moment?
Look, it was never going to be the easiest first game to come into. I think Arsenal, they're flying at the top of the league. I think as well, there's all the fine margins that happen during the game. If Colomwani's goal wasn't disallowed and we're back in it 2-2, I think it could have been a different story. But I think reality is we weren't really at the races for the 490. So I don't think we can put it down to just bad officiating and like that, even if that was part of it. I think maybe similar to players, I think he's also got to get to grips quickly with the intensity of the Premier League, because I think you can't get away with sort of half-arsing pressing. And what I mean by that is because when he was brought in, he was sort of he was known for his teams going man-to-man and quite aggressive on their press. But some of my concerns looking at his previous times at Juve and Lazio, and we saw it against Arsenal, was that it was almost 50-50 as to when players do. Some would press quite heavy, others would drop back. So then you almost end up leaving too much space, especially in the middle. I think we saw Rice, Zubamendi, a lot of these players had a lot more time on the ball than I would have personally have liked. So I think he's also got to get grips to that a bit. But it's also on the players to sort of adapt to what he's asking for, because I think under Frank, we were just extremely passive. And look, he said himself that it's that some of the players have got bad habits that he's trying to get out of them. So look, I think it's a rude awakening. It's definitely not one of the easiest games at all to come into straight away, as much as we would have loved to have knocked them for 6 and put them under pressure for the title, but it wasn't meant to be. I think it's I felt like crap after the game, and it's just always horrible losing to your rivals, but I think we can't lose sight of how important some of these next few games are. Fulham, Palace at home, we've still got to play Forest, Everton. These are quote unquote winnable games. Yeah. And when I say that, I mean these are the games we absolutely have to win to get as far away from this relegation talk as much as possible. So those are the ones we truly need to focus on the most, I think.
Agree. Yeah, I mean, look, ultimately, like you said there, I don't think Arsenal is a be-all and end-all, but the reality is that we do need to pick up points sooner rather than later, because it is becoming a very serious position towards the bottom end of the league that, I think at this point, for those that were maybe looking at it and thinking, not sure Spurs are involved, but I think we've got to say now that they're heavily involved in this relegation battle and they need to steer away from this as quickly as possible. I mean, like George said there, T's bringing you in, we knew it was going to be a difficult task to face Arsenal on the Sunday. Tudor had only 5 days to work with the squad. I know beforehand you were buoyed when you came on here, the fact that he took the team out for a team bonding event, and there was obviously, of course, just a feeling of the way the words he was using there was a real maybe degree of understanding maybe the task at hand. But he did say that the two teams were on totally different worlds. He called it both a psychological and a physical level in difference. And again, he mentioned the fact around he does feel we've got quality in the squad, but there's a lot of bad habits. 24, 48 hours on, Teach, what are your main takeaways in terms of what kind of task he's got ahead of him?
I suspect, like everybody else, I was left a little numb. Just get used to it, which is horrid.
I think we're just getting an echo on your line, Teach. I think we're just getting on 1 second.
Say that again?
We're just getting an echo on your line. Give me 1 second.
Oh.
Hold on. Yeah, it's just we've got a bit of a.
Why don't I come back out and come back in again?
Yeah, come back out and come back in. I'll go to Ad to bring him in. That's absolutely fine. Thanks so much. As just coming on to you on that point, I'll just repeat the question for the listeners on audio. Look, I mean, like I said there, we knew it was going to be a difficult game itself on Sunday against Arsenal. I mean, that's not going to be the barometer on what is being measured on. But the fact of what he said after the game about it being two totally different worlds and there being a psychological and physical level in terms of difference, and then going on to say about the fact he feels there is a talented group of players there, but there's a lot of bad habits that have been picked up. 48, 72 hours on, Ads. What was your take in terms of what he said after the game? And have you got genuine fears already about the fact what he's walking into and maybe not understanding the task at hand?
No, I think he probably understands it quite well. I mean, he's been brought in to do a firefighter job. And, the club had the decision to make where do they go and try and find the manager for the future, or do they go and find someone to get us out of the situation and then we start again in the summer? And they've chosen the latter. And to be honest, I think in that sense, you sort of want a guy to give a few home truths, because if he burns a couple of bridges on the way out, it doesn't actually matter because he hasn't going to have to rebuild them next year. So, we've all got through the dopamine hit of losing Thomas Frank, which I think the majority of us were quite happy at that happening. But that wasn't really going to be the be all and end all and change everything and make everything immediately better, because you're thrusting a guy into the biggest game of the season in terms of what the fans think, with 14 players out, and it was always going to be very, very difficult to compete. I feel like the players did about as well as we could have asked for on Sunday. Obviously, there was some gloss on the scoreline at the end, and we gave away silly goals, which is obviously hugely frustrating. But I'm not, I don't. It wasn't a free hit because it's a derby, but I do think you have to leave that game and think, do you know what? If we're going to lose one, not a huge surprise. But the thing that bugged me about Frank a lot of the time was he would often come out and say, well, I've seen this and I in a game and I'm not happy with this. I'm going to, we'll use that for the future. And it never actually seemed like he changed anything. Spence was constantly thrust out on the left-hand side. I know he had to be on Sunday for various reasons, but he wouldn't change up as much as we thought. We were told it was this tactically flexible manager who would change a lot, and he didn't do anything. Well, Tudor has come out and said on Sunday that, I've seen some things and I need to change them. I don't give Igor Tudor 1% of the blame for what happened on Sunday. But if he rolls out with a similar 11 against Fulham on Sunday, then I will start to have some questions, because he told us he's learned some things, he's going to change them. Well, we now need to see that now, because we're in a real situational position whereby this is just this is going to be an 11-game period of Tottenham's history that will be gone as soon as this is finished. And stuff needs to start changing immediately. We haven't got time to be bedding people in and sort of getting systems learned. We need changes now. And if it means he has to do something a bit mad on Sunday against Fulham, I don't mind it, because what we saw on Sunday cannot happen again.
I think that's really, really fair. I think it is, and T's bringing you back in, and it should be fine in terms of carrying on now. The interesting thing about it was that obviously Frank was obviously known for using a back three for a lot of his time at Spurs, and Tudor kind of, you'd say, maybe followed suit in that to some degree. It's a system that he's had success in terms of Juve and Udinese, and of course Lazio in the earlier period in terms of what he's done recently in terms of firefighter jobs. But it's remarkable, the fact, and we've said this already before, that we've conceded 8 goals on aggregate to Arsenal over the 2 fixtures. And I think when you look at individual players, just picking up on what Adam has said there, well, Xavi Simons, for those that weren't aware about it in terms of that game, he was, dispossessed 7 times during that game against Arsenal at the weekend. We've got this real issue around disciplinary. I'm not sure how aware people are of it, but Spurs are leading the league in disciplinary points of 75. That's 10 more than Brighton in second. And then added to their total with the 3 yellow cards against Arsenal, you've then got this situation where Romero is still out. So whilst it is a case, maybe he will need to make changes in terms of the weekend, what we know is he's working with a very much limited squad of players. So Teach, is it very much about, as much as maybe having to make changes, but keeping what he's got really on side at the moment, because there's not that many options, Teach, when you look at the overall squad to work with.
No, I mean, listen, I'm sure he'd love to make changes. We can all see as well that we have glaring deficiencies in our squad. And of course, it makes it all the more galling that we just came out of a transfer window. And so it's very difficult for anybody to come in and do that job. I mean, before I was plagued by an echo on the line, how I felt after the game on Sunday, which was numb, really, which is a horrid place to be. You want to have some sort of visceral reaction, whether that's, joyful or devastated or whatever it is, but to feel numbness, a sort of nothingness, is a real damning indictment, I think, of where we are as a football club right now. I completely agree with what the chaps were saying, and listening to Adam and comments and everything coming in from our viewers and listeners, who are a terribly learned bunch. I understand that resources were limited. However, I didn't see much fight. I just didn't see that. And when I was on the pre-game show, that's what I was calling for. And in all honesty, what I expected. No, it wasn't a free hit, but you could really just bring them something, just make it difficult, just be difficult to beat. And again, if anyone's, well, you don't even have to have played the game, even if you just follow it. That effort and grit and determination, it really does. It wins your football games. It does at any level. I wax lyrical a million times about my club, right? OGFC, we play every Friday. And even we're rubbish, but even at our level, just grit and determination, will, unity, positivity is massively important. I'm no great player, no way. Like, we've got guys at the club who played professionally. They're incredible players. But if you're negative, that team loses. And I just didn't see that kind of dogged unity that I know can be really, that can be ignited in young men. And to be honest, especially when your back's against the wall, you'll never meet an animal more dangerous than when they're in trouble, when they're wounded and backed against a wall. And so that's really what I was looking for. I think that's most of it, what we were looking for. Just seeing some comments coming in. No passion, guts and fight. And again, that's not a technical thing. It's not even really a physical thing. It's a mental thing.
That should be there, teachers, the bare minimum, shouldn't it? That's the concern.
Absolutely, brother. And the thing is that you can make that decision night before, 2 nights before, 3 nights before. That morning, you kiss your wife. Bye-bye, darling. She says, give them hell, sweetheart. You make that, or make it in the dressing room. You make it in the huddle, but you make that decision before the game starts that I will not give them an inch here. That Brentford game, a Brentford, is that 11 so much better than our 11? No. And they were Arsenal were very, very lucky to get away with drawing that game. That was such an electric, exhilarating performance from a group of young men who said to each other before that game began, whenever that was, we will give them nothing today, boys. And I just don't see that. That for me is really what's missing in this group. And I don't just mean the players, I mean the whole thing. Where is that? Where is the person who comes in and just goes, let's reset. Let me remind you all, we are Tottenham Hotspur Football Club. 1882 we began. We were the first team to win the impossible double. We were the team who won the cup when we were non-league. We have a history. We have a legacy. Look at our fan base, man. Look at that parade that I was so fortunate to come home and be a part of, with 30,000 people, and it was such an incredible feeling. That is who we are. I really believe we need a reset. And if I was the manager at that football club, all those boys can play. That is my number one focus, is reminding them which club they are playing for, what really playing for the badge actually means. There's too many cliches and platitudes, man. What that really means. Give them a bit of a history lesson. Walk them around, show them some stuff if they don't know, and have them fight for that, because we're in trouble.
Just on the point of being in trouble, George, I feel like this has been a situation where I know, we've been on this show for the last 2, 3, 4 months, and it feels like, I mean, no disrespect to the national media, if they may take offence to this, but, I've been saying this on Sky, when I've been on BBC and different things, that we are sleepwalking into a relegation. And I know, Ad, I've heard you say it so many times on Echo of Glory in the last 2, 3 months. It only feels like now that this coverage is actually coming to the fore in terms of the real mainstream media that, Spurs are in deep, deep problems and they are in a relegation battle. And I just think, before, George, I ask you how serious it is in your opinion, I just want to read people out these selection of stats that I've got here for those that don't think we're in a relegation battle. So far, we're 4 points off the current, obviously, bottom places for the first, and we'd be relegated for the first time in 49 years if we was, and that was to happen. The weekend was our 16th defeat of the season in all competitions. We're 9 matches without a win. We still haven't won a Premier League game this year, and we're about to enter March shortly. We've 7 games in a row conceded 2 goals or more, and we're on our worst Premier League run since the 2 points from 8 games under one day Ramos. As everyone knows, it's 2 Premier League wins in 18 matches, from which Spurs have taken, just as a whole, if you look at the bigger picture in general over that, just 12 points. That's 1 game off the half of the 38 Premier League fixtures, and it's 6 defeats in 10. We've won 1 home league game since August the 16th, and even that was 2 months ago. And it's 2 home wins all season. So 10 points from a possible 13 home games. It gets even worse. 12 points from a possible 54 in a bigger context of the picture. And we've lost 34 of the last 66 Premier League games. Palace, Brentford, Brighton and Bournemouth have got more points than us in the last 3 calendar years. George, how serious is the threat of relegation in your opinion?
It's very serious now. I mean, I was concerned back in December with the way things were heading under Frank. I was worried after that West Ham loss because I did not see anything get better from my concerns back in December, and it seems to just get worse and worse. And the fact that we've only got 2 home wins all season against Burnley and Brentford was extremely worrying. And then you go and look at, since that West Ham loss, funny enough, I think West Ham have got 11 points in their last 6 matches. So I think every week some people say, no, we're not in it, we're not in it because the gap was 8 points and then now it's 5 points. Like, it's just dropping and it's getting worse because we aren't getting the results. And look, I'm hoping that Igor Tudor can sort of get something back into this team, get that fight back. I think, like we said before, the Arsenal game is one of the toughest. To ask for 3 points there would have been extremely difficult. So that's where we've got to kick on from Fulham onwards. We have a good chance to get away from it, but to say that we aren't in a relegation battle, I think would be quite disingenuous, to be honest with you. And I think we need to do whatever we can to get as far away from it as possible, because Tottenham Hotspur should be nowhere near this. Should be nowhere near. A club of our size should not have been put in a position where we are here. And it's down to a multitude of things. It all stems from the top. But when you plan your squad so poorly, to the point that, yes, we are having a lot of injuries, but the rest of the squad just cannot handle it. Even when injuries weren't as bad as they are now, we knew there were so many holes in the squad. We've been screaming for another left back for the last 3 seasons because we know that Udogie cannot do it by himself and he's extremely injury prone. Yet all we were given was an 18-year-old from Brazil, and we knew he weren't going to be a starter for us because the very next day they went to go get Robertson. We knew he wasn't going to be a starter for us, and the fact that we couldn't get Robertson over the line just shows that how terrible this team is. The squad has been built by those at the top, and I think we need to really sort of grit our teeth. And I don't think we're going to play sort of fancy football or anything like that. I don't think Tudor's here to do that. I think what we really need to do now, from now until the end of the season, is just grind out as many 3 points as possible just to get away from it. But yeah, I think to say that we aren't in it would be just really really negligible. That's not the right word. You know what I mean? I think we have to face the fact of where we are right now.
It does feel like a degree of, well, not a degree. I think it's been a consistent neglection around Spurs for many, many years, and we've allowed the squad to get to where it's got to. And that's the thing. I said this on the last show to bring you in, Ads. I was watching the game in front of me. I know we've said this so often. I've heard you say it so often on Echo of Glory, that there's not like a single player right now that's on that pitch. And I know we're limited against Arsenal. We had so many injuries. You've got 11, 12 fit players, but there's nowhere near anyone that gets into that Pochettino team, over a few years ago. And it just was hit home even further when you had Dele on the pitch at half time. That is probably, at the moment, Spurs are doing this kind of, if it was PR model, they rolled out Dele, they rolled out Vertonghen the week before, just kind of giving you any real connection of what it was like when times were good. How serious, Ads, do you take the prospect of relegation, in your opinion?
Well, I mean, you'd be daft not to, unfortunately, at the moment. It is, the direction of travel of the team suggests that it's a serious possibility. I still think that there is hopefully enough quality to get us out of it. Again, I'm trying to look at this as just almost like an 11-game season now, and we probably need to get 4 or 5 wins out of it. Almost forgetting, the 2 wins from 18 games is obviously terrible and is a suggestion of how we are playing, how we have played. But really, you would hope that someone like Tudor coming in now can kind of semi-draw a line under that and just look at this like a set of games that just needs to be attacked. To be honest, I understand the idea of grinding out and trying to defend our way to wins. But for me, there's almost like this idea of sort of positive thinking and trying to imbue the players with a bit of confidence. Like, for me, we're not going to win games by trying to keep clean sheets. I just don't think we've got the quality defensively to do that. I'd sort of rather, I don't know what the rest of you guys think of this, try and see every game as how can we create 5 or 6 big chances a game to score 2 goals. Because for me, we're going to win games by scoring goals, not by trying to keep them out. I just don't see that we're the sort of team that has that mentality like a Forest do, for example, or Nuno's West Ham, where they can go into a game and block it out with 10 men behind the ball and hopefully Bowen or someone catches the team out on the break. For me, it's a case of, right, we've seen, I said to my guys on Monday, watching the game on Sunday, was like having a bird's eye view of a guy trying to navigate through a maze, and you're watching him and every single avenue he goes to is blocked off with another wall. If you compare our passing angles to Arsenal's, there was just nothing there. And people can criticize Simmons and Spence, and I totally understand that they didn't have good games, but look at the options someone like Declan Rice has got when he's on the ball. There's 3 or 4 men available for a pass. There was no one for Spence when he's got his back to goal. You either basically kick it out into Chip King, or you give it to Vicario, and then you lose it that way. So for me, they need to start thinking of how can we create 5 or 6 big chances a game to win these games, not hope that we can keep teams out and scramble a goal at the other end. That would be how I look at it. Whether Tudor's the guy that's going to do that, I don't know. And maybe that's a bit sort of, fanciful to even think that way. But I think we have to go out and try and, forget even the word relegation, go out and try and beat Fulham, not sort of hope that they don't beat you. That would be how I approach it.
I completely agree with you, mate.
Yeah,
I completely agree with you, Adam. I think where we have an opportunity to win games, or how we're going to go about winning games, is to because we've got two sort of warrior-like central defensive midfielders in Palhinha and Conor Gallagher, who I do believe are both good players, but they're not creative players necessarily. I do think we could get a bit more out of Conor Gallagher in that regard. But so they kind of, I think, provide us with enough steel or reinforcement to then say, well, let's apply a bit more pressure. And like the final third, yes, the passing and everything was woeful, but I also think that if we can imbue, because remember, we're a very young team as well. They're very, very young. And so they will, I believe, respond to scoring goals rather than a sort of Sean Dyche approach of doggedly, backs to the wall, kind of let's tough this thing out. I think if we can approach games where we say we need to score at least 2, I think that will get us over the line this season. And then we see what happens in the summer and, all this nonsense. Oh, we're going to whip up the wage structure. I'm sure we'll talk about that later. And, more platitudes. Oh, the war chest. Have we forgotten about the war chest? How much was in it? 300 million? Was it 400, 500? And now there's we're going to spend 100 in January. Didn't spend that. Blah, blah, blah. But for now, we have to find points where we can. And I concur that, dare I say it, playing Tottenham football and scoring goals, I believe, gives us the best opportunity to get ourselves out of this particularly sticky quandary.
The question is on that, George, is whether he's got the ability to formulate any kind of a team that can play that type of football. And I know, again, I read those stats earlier. I mean, the problem is now we have, whether people like it or not, we have normalised losing. We've lost 34 of the last 66 Premier League games. I read it out to you just a few minutes ago. Palace, Brentford, Brighton, Bournemouth, they've got more points than us in the last 3 calendar years. You look at these fixtures that are coming up for Tottenham, and in between that, you've got tricky away trips to the likes of Liverpool, Villa, Chelsea. You'll be unlikely to generate maybe points there. I mean, West Ham, I think, forgive me, there's been like a 9-point swing in the last 3-4 weeks. And at the moment, you've got West Ham, I think, they've been unbeaten in 5 of their last 7. Forest have made a change in their manager, Vitor Pereira. I thought they were really unlucky at the weekend to not have taken anything at home to Liverpool. They won in Europe midweek. He gave them a bounce when he went into Wolves initially. So that's obviously why they've made that change. Leeds, to be fair, at the moment, they've really done well at home at Ellen Road. That's where they've been a real fortress there. They're a couple of points clear of us as things stands at the moment. Do you have a concern, George? We say we've got to win just 3 or 4 games, but I'll be honest with you, maybe I'm being negative. I don't think I am. We've not won at all in 2026. Can you tell me, George, realistically, hand on your heart, where those wins are coming from?
Look, it's been tough because if you look at the reverse fixtures, and I know we've got different managers, so it could go differently, but wins out of all of those, Crystal Palace 1-0, but we were terrible in that match. Battered by Forest, drew to Sunderland. I think we just about beat the likes of Brighton and Leeds, but probably Brighton was a draw, was it? Either way, these are all close matches or losses. But I think for me, bringing in someone like Igor Tudor, who's done this before with Lazio, Marseille, and Juventus, I think he's not coming in to rip up the tactical landscape of Spurs. I think we need someone that he's going to try and command the room a bit more, tell the situation how it is, unlike Frank, who every single week, I think T said this earlier in the show, every single week was just constantly saying, yeah, this was good, that was good. I've seen things, we've looked better the last 10 games despite not winning a match. It's none of that. I think he's saying it how it is, sort of Conte-esque in that style, but I think the team needs it right now. Look, he was dealt a bad hand regardless because of the injuries. It's just insane, right? To have, what, 12 really fit first team players, and even then, some of them you probably would argue aren't even first team players. So I think maybe with a couple players coming back, hopefully Porro, hopefully Danzo, Romero in a couple games, hopefully those sort of players can help balance us a little bit, because the fact that we have to shoehorn Spence on the left as left wing back, it just doesn't work. He's not a left wing back at all. I think when he's on the left side, we really can't attack down there, because we truly do need a natural left-footed player. And it's then, do you take the risk on a young player like Sousa, who is naturally left-footed and has played left wing back or quite attacking before on that left-hand side. But I think having Porro back just gives that a little bit more ability to attack better, because we saw how much Frank had to over-rely on Porro and Romero for their ability to pass forward. And the fact that both of them have been out now for the last couple matches, we just can't seem to create from anything. And I will give credit to Conor Moani in that Arsenal game, because I think that's the most effort he's shown in a match that wasn't against the previous club that he's been at. So maybe Tudor can hopefully reinvigorate the team a bit. And I think with that first match, he had the 5 days to train with them leading up to it. I think there's only so much you can really see in training, because there's no opponent to sort of set the bar, set the level of where we need to be at. I think he can set certain boundaries at the beginning, but I think that Arsenal game will be very, very, very useful for him to know, okay, even though these are top, we are millions of miles away from the pace here. And I think if it's more hope talking here, but I think hopefully he's seen from that match what needs to be done to raise the level. Players need to give everything. I know it's tough with only 12 players available or so, but I think they need to really step up their effort levels, because these teams that are down here at the bottom, they're used to fighting these battles in relegation. Spurs aren't, realistically. We were on the beach last year when we were down there. So I think the players need a good kick up the arse, and I'm hoping the sort of the energy that Tudor's bring, he'll be able to do that. I think Frank was a bit too much of a nice guy to handle this sort of thing at the moment. So I mean, it's more hope than anything, really.
And the key thing is that we've had Arsenal every week, but at the same time, we've not won a game since the start of the year. So again, there is that genuine concern there. Do you guys feel, I mean, ask you, do you feel we've got enough, would you be stunned if we were relegated, but with what he's got to work with and the teams that we've got to play, you think we'll just have about enough and we won't get fully dragged into it? Because my biggest concern for me is that, and I've said this consistently on here, that if we drop into the bottom three, I'm not sure if we're well equipped enough, like a Forest, like a West Ham, that have already been in that scenario to then climb out of it. Do you have a concern if we do drop into it, where we've got the mentality to get out of it, Ads, when you've got the manager coming out and suggesting the fact that he feels his bad habits being addressed at the moment?
Look, anything I can say now is ultimately a guess, because, as you said,
it's all a guess. It's all a guess.
My main optimism would come from after that international break, as we head into April, when we've got 5 or 6 games left. Outside of Maddison and Kulusevski, you would imagine, and I know that the lack of resources now could lead to more injuries, you would imagine / hope that we would be as fit as we've been all season, hopefully. And at that point, are we playing teams that probably haven't got an awful lot to play for anymore? The likes of Everton, Brighton, Wolves even probably won't have as much to play for. And I suppose you could say that's more dangerous, blah, blah, blah. Aston Villa might be going for the Europa League and be 6th in the table and sort of do what we did last year and focus on the Europa League. But I've said for a little while that if we stay up, based on the way the club has been run in the last year, if we stay up, it'll be because of luck, ultimately. They've had a punt on Tudor and it'll work or it won't. And if it doesn't work and we go down, we'll have deserved it, because they will have walked into this position. And a lot of people, the fans are seen as the great unwashed. And what do we know? People have been raising concerns for a long time about this club from the top down, and no one listens, because we're just the fans And, you know, what do we know? We just pay our money and we go in like lemmings and we boo and how dare we? We're so entitled. But if, as I said on the last time I was on, if you like the Olympic judging, take away the top score and the bottom score, and you get a decent average of what the true reflection is. And the fans in general have been right for a long time about where this club is going. And that's what makes it so frustrating. That and the fact that ultimately all the financial constraints are a choice, because they've got the money if they wanted to spend it. Other clubs don't have this luxury. Look at Villa and Newcastle. They're, moaning about PSR. They don't have the choice because they haven't got the revenue. Everything should be in place to make Tottenham a behemoth. And fans have been, this is nothing that fans haven't been saying for a long time in the main. Now, obviously you get your extremists on both ends. And as I say, tend to discount those because that view isn't always worth listening to. But the median of the fan base has been pretty spot on and saying we've got to be careful or we'll get dragged into something. And now we're here, and it's hard to say that we wouldn't deserve it if something bad happened. Obviously, I pray that doesn't happen.
Yeah,
but it's been coming. If you pick up the breadcrumbs on the trail, this has been coming.
Do you think, George? I mean, I've heard some people say, I can't believe I'm saying this. I've heard something. Well, we'll go down. They'll just sell. I don't think it works like that. I mean, these owners, they're not going to sell Tottenham at the first opportunity when it's going to be at a lower value than what it would have been if they were in the Premier League. Do you think sometimes it's a bit of a warped sense of thinking, well, if we get relegated, then they're going to sell the club? I mean, I've seen people suggest that even on the back of the Arsenal defeat, but they ain't going to go anywhere if this club's not in the Premier League. I mean, they're going to lose 100 million plus in terms of TV revenue alone. Do you think, Jules, at the examination in a bigger picture, there is no benefit to Tottenham not being in the Premier League? There just isn't. There is no benefit, George.
No, it's absolute nonsense. Anyone that thinks getting relegated is somehow a good thing for Spurs. Bearing in mind, these owners are holding out for more than 4 billion for this club, and you think that they're all of a sudden going to sell just because we're in the Championship, when our value would have decreased astronomically. When we're going to lose sponsorships, that will happen upon a relegation. You're going to lose fans going to games, that will also happen. Big players going to leave, and yeah, we probably could get up just by the fact that we probably could just outspend every single Championship team and get the best Championship players to then win it potentially, but that's not a guarantee either. I think the ramifications for going down is extremely bad for Spurs and very dangerous. And there's no way the club sell just because we got relegated. That's almost an impossibility, given their valuation of where they see the club at, from what they've built in terms of the stadium and everything. So no, I think we have to avoid it at all costs. And we've seen we've seen some big teams go down and not come up straight away. I think Villa's one of them, where they were struggling for a bit at the bottom. They went down, took a bit to get back up, and nearly went down again if it wasn't for technical faults. And they've almost been very lucky to be where they are. So in this day and age, it's not guaranteed for anything. So no, I think it would be an absolute disaster if we got relegated.
Okay. Well, look, hopefully we haven't got to think about that. We are going to go for our belated first break of the show for our listeners on audio. Thanks to the over nearly 7,000 that are with us on the live. We're joined by TJ Ramini back on the show. Lovely to see him here. We're joined by George Achiilea, and we're joined by the superb Adam Nathan from the Echo of Glory podcast. They've all got a bit fancy of Echo of Glory. They've got a interactive website ad. Do you want to give a quick mention to what's going on in the Echo of Glory world? The fellow suffering Spurs fans out there?
Yeah, we're trying to add a little bit of interaction with the pod. So there's a website, echoofglory.com. You can pick your best team in your life, your worst Spurs team in your life, the team you'd like to see against Fulham. We've got a virtual pub in there, which is basically like a WhatsApp thread, basically for all the Tottenham fans during the game, and it's called the virtual pub. You can name the pub, make a little crest. But hey, it's your show. I appreciate you giving it a bit of airtime, but do come and check us out. I promise you, everyone on our pod is much better than me, so that makes it much worthwhile listening to. And yeah, come and give us a shout.
Listen, Andrew, we've got to suffer. We might as well just suffer together, right? It's a tricky time at the moment. Talk about suffering. One player that looks like he is deeply suffering right now on the pitch. And you're probably thinking, why am I even talking to him about suffering? Because he can get away. We can't. We're locked in forever. Micky Van De Ven. Do you want to ask you about Micky? Because there was some interesting body language displayed by Micky in that Arsenal game. I mean, it's difficult because I will just say there was this kind of clip doing the rounds on social media where it appeared Tudor was telling the players to press up. But I think what the clip didn't really show is whether he's aiming his frustration at Micky, or he's aiming his frustration at Dragusin, or if he's just aiming his frustration generally at the whole defence for not pushing up. But it does feel like when you're looking at Micky Van De Ven's body language at the moment, it doesn't look particularly... listen, he shouldn't be looking particularly happy because of where we are, but I just don't know. There's this feeling that, he's been the captain multiple times this season. He's leading the team right now because of Romero's absence. These rumours have flared up again about Real Madrid being interested. There was a suggestion in the earlier part of the season. I think late August, early September, they might try and restart negotiations around a new deal. I mean, how stunned would you be, T, to see him put pen to paper? Because I think regardless whether Tottenham, I can't remember what I'm saying, stay in the Premier League or not in the Premier League, I don't think Micky Van De Ven's going to be here next season, despite, of course, having a contract in place for still a number of years at the club. I think Micky looks done to me. I mean, do you get that feeling, Tej, from what you see out on that
Certainly
pitch?
At the moment, and again, none of us can blame him. This is the, I was going to say frustrating, but it's actually sad, isn't it? Is that we're looking at somebody like Micky, and I'm sure most of us would say, thank you for your time, good luck to you, mate. And again, it kind of harks back to the sentiments that I was talking about at the top of the show. This feeling of loss, really. And so footballers' careers are very short. And, he's kind of coming into that prime of his life. He is a hugely regarded player globally. And so the fact that, Real Madrid, the most successful football team of all time, are going, we fancy you, that's going to get your attention, isn't it? And so will he be with us next season? I'm not going to say no. However, what needs to happen? And again, I cannot stand all these sound bites. I can't remember which show it was, maybe 2 shows ago, 3 shows ago, when you asked at the end of the show, Rick, what is it that we want? And I think you were probably talking a bit more literally, like, what is it we're wanting out of the results for the next game that we're going to play? And for me, what I want is no more rhetoric, is this nauseating rhetoric from this executive branch that we cannot stand. We cannot stand any of you. We cannot stand Langer, we cannot stand Vinay, and we cannot stand the Lewis family. We cannot stand you, right? So if you think in what universe or scenario, and again, I did say this before as well, football and sport is entertainment. It's the entertainment industry, right? Something I know a little about. And so for goodness sake, you have to know when to just shut your traps. We've had enough platitudes and enough rhetoric and enough gas. We need action. It's so easy once again to say, at a time where this theory cannot be tested, we're going to tear up our wage structure and do things differently from now on. At a time where we can't test that. Well, what happened to that in January? We just came through a month where you could have acted, you could have really shown us some great impetus and actually backed up all this nonsensical drivel that you've been feeding us for generations. So with Micky, if I'm any part of Micky's team, his agent, his friend, his brother, his father, whoever it may be, I'm walking into that office and I'm just saying, listen, because I do think he has a connection to us, right? He had a pretty precarious time in his career, bless his heart. He was told, you're not good enough. Ironically, he was told you're not fast enough, right? And he developed and he's become this great player. And we have really put him on the world stage. And I do believe that he is a solid and a thoroughly decent young man. And so if we were to show him, like prove to him, not tell him, because my goodness, the Tottenham board, your words mean nothing, mean less than nothing. And so show us, say, we are bringing in this player, paying him this much. We are going to bring in this player, paying him this much. This player, paying him this much. I've said this before. The narrative in football can change very quickly. You can change that narrative about yourself immediately, but it comes with a sizable check. It is expensive to change that narrative. But to Adam's point and to everybody's point, not to reduce what Adam said, we all know, he's speaking for us, right? We all know we are an extremely profitable football club. The money is there. I used the analogy last time. We are Fiesta shopping on Ferrari budget, not the other way around. People go, oh, I want a Ferrari, you only have Fiesta budget. We're the opposite. And so could we keep him? Yes, if we prove to him that we're changing, we are ambitious, properly ambitious, we really do want to compete on four fronts by bringing in all these players. And of course, this is for you, brother. This is for you. Go make him the highest paid player that we've ever had, and then bring in some quality players and prove to all of them that we take the ambition of the club seriously. If not, then good luck to him. Go somewhere else, brother. Go to a real football club.
What do you think, Ed, in terms of his body language for you, Mickey? Have you got anything you're concerned about with him at the moment, or is this more a team problem? I mean, I was wondering what you made of that situation with Tudor on the touchline and him trying to get the players up the field. Was that, do you think, aimed at Mickey or aimed at the defence or more aimed at the team? Because again, he wanted to address that point afterwards. He said he feels there's quality in the squad, but he feels there's a lot of bad habits in there. I suppose, again, it comes back to how quickly he can get the bad habits out of them. But I am concerned about Mickey generally. Are you concerned about the fact, because he's leading the team in for at least the next few games in Romero's absence?
I'm concerned that you end up having a position with one of your best players, which is impossible to recover. But obviously, from the general point that, as a fan, is I expect every Spurs player to give 100% at all times. That's what we want, and I suppose that's what we should always expect. However, they are human beings. They are young kids. I mean, my boss is me, so I can't necessarily speak for how people can be misled by their bosses. But, in a lot of environments, in work, in life, if you're not happy with your work situation, it can be difficult to motivate yourself, whether or not, however much money you make or whatever. And George, I'm also going to a lot of away games, and I'll never forget when we lost 4-0 to Chelsea under Tim Sherwood, the famous no-gut game. I was living in Kilburn at the time, and I was so angry and upset that I walked back from Chelsea to Kilburn just to sort of clear my head, because I was just so upset about all of it. And I remember thinking after that game, Vertonghen, rubbish, got to go. Ericsson, rubbish, got to go. Carl Walker, rubbish. Then Danny Rose signed a new contract, rubbish. And I just, the general macro level of the club is so poor right now that I just haven't got the energy to stick it to individual players, because there's nothing there for me that it couldn't be recovered by good process, a good manager, better players coming in. Van De Ven is going to be, for me, a world-class player. And I would be very, very nervous about losing players like that. Same as Romero. I wouldn't sell Romero, because ultimately you're not going to get a better player than him. It just doesn't strike me as that's the way to do it. Romero, in the prime of his career, has joined Spurs. And yeah, we've probably elevated his level. But the three managers Spurs have hired in the summers when Romero's been there are Nuno Espirito Santo, Ange Postecoglou, not to relitigate sort of his quality, and Thomas Frank. And to be honest, those three are below the level that I would expect if I was a World Cup winner at a club that claim they've got huge ambitions. And, Vinay and Levy didn't have to say on record, we want to win the league, we want to win the Champions League. They offer that view. We didn't ask them to say on record, on club channels, what their ambitions were. They said that to us. And all we can do as fans is hold them to the words that they actually say. And if we're doing it, the player's going to be doing it too. So yeah, Van De Ven should be trying harder, perhaps. But for me, it's so much bigger than that. And I haven't got the energy to be digging out players like that, who deep down we know have the best interest of the club at heart, but they're being let down by their surroundings.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, George, anything else to say on Mickey's situation? I think these rumours around Madrid flaring back up. I mean, again, it's no surprise. Like we've said, he's a world-class player. I suppose, again, at the moment, we're in a situation where what makes me, it's not even funny. You shouldn't be laughing. You've got the club coming out saying that season tickets are available for next season. Well, at the moment, you don't know what division we're going to be in. You don't know who the manager's going to be, George. I mean, how can anyone make a decision at the moment with regards to next season when you're not sure what's happening this season, George?
Yeah, look, on the Van De Ven thing, I think it's of course he's going to look elsewhere if we're in this situation that we are in now, right? Because as Adam rightly pointed out there, he has the potential to be a world-class player, and it's not just us saying it. You've got pros in the game saying it. You've got managers in the game saying it. And I think someone like him at the age of, what is he, 23 now, I think it would be silly for him not to look away from Spurs if we are continuing down this path that we're on. And it doesn't seem to be a fluke now. The fact is, 17th last year, heading down towards relegation, and God forbid that happens. Obviously, I hope it doesn't. But the Romero's case as well. He signed a new contract in the summer, presumably on the basis of promises that we're going to deliver better players, a better team. Because at the end of the day, he would not be going on a rant like he did on socials, specifically saying lies that have been told from people if that wasn't the case. So I think these players are going to look away. I think Kane, for example, gave us way longer than he probably should have done. Maybe because he felt like he owed us because of the fact he came through the academy. But these players aren't from Spurs. They're not going to have that necessarily that same affliction towards the club, even if they do truly love it. Because I do think, like the guys have said, Romero and Van De Ven have their I think they do love Spurs. Like, they wouldn't react the way they did from the win last year. And you see it in some of Romero's posts as well, the way he talks about Spurs as a club he loves. I think it's just the people at the top have constantly lied. And I do worry that we lose them in the summer with the way things are heading. Like if TJ said, that we don't show the ambition, which so far, realistically, they haven't done so. So how can we say that they're definitely going to do it in the summer? And I think if the players have been lied to one too many times, then they're just probably going to call it quits. And like you say, it's Romero, World Cup winner. Is he really he's at the prime age now? Is he really going to give up more years at Spurs if he believes that the board and the club or whoever it is running the show aren't actually going to back and create a team that can win things? Because Lord knows we have the infrastructure to do that. We just don't seem to want to give the players, give the maybe the right management, so to speak, not just the actual manager, you know, like in terms of directors of footballs and whatnot, people actually running the show, not putting the right people in place. So yeah, it's a worrying time for some of them. And then I just then don't trust them to rebuild that team, to then say, okay, we've got 80 million for Van De Ven. He wanted to leave. Okay, great. Now let's use that to get the next best one. At the moment, you can't say that we're gonna deliver that.
No, I think that's fair. It is. I mean, George, to stick with you, because there's a story currently running out of The Guardian in this last 24, 48 hours around the fact Tottenham are planning to rip up the club's rigid wage structure before a major overhaul of the squad in the summer if the team avoid relegation. There's apparently an acknowledgement at Spurs that the club have under-invested in player salaries for years, which, along with the injury crisis, has led to there being 16th in the Premier League, and as we know, 4 points off the bottom three. Tottenham's wage bill is the lowest of the so-called Big Six clubs. It was 222 million in the most recently published accounts for the 23-24 season. Little more than half that of Man City's 413 million over that same period, although it has increased because of signings of Xavi Simons, Mohamed Kudus, and Conor Gallagher. The signing of Gallagher, the 35 million signing from Atletico Madrid, is on wage understood to be in the region of 200,000 a week, and regarded as a significant turning point inside the club. What do you make of the timing this is coming out, George, for you?
There's always some supposedly positive news whenever season ticket renewals around, isn't it? Yeah, I think it's just, if being honest, I think it's just a bunch of PR. I think it is. I think the club aren't really as interested. I think we've heard this many times. Usually it's a link to specific players that tries to get people excited, and then all of a sudden we never hear their names later on in the summer, and it never comes to fruition. So they can see what they want. And look, if I'm being honest, like, you know, an actual view on it, we have also increased some wages. Xavi Simons is on 200k, Gallagher's on 200k. So it's not that we aren't increasing it, but I think it's just a lot of false promises at the moment right now, in the hopes that people renew and come back. And yeah, don't worry, guys, things will get better. But how many times have we heard that the last 5-6 years?
Yeah, but do you know him personally, George, that right now, I don't ask you as well. I mean, I don't know anyone that I know personally that are definitely white today. They're renewing their season ticket at the moment based on the fact you've got no idea what division we're going to be in. No. You've got no idea who the manager is, George. How can anyone commit at the moment?
No, exactly. And when they're saying freezing prices, which, yeah, oh, wow, sounds great. But then you realise that could mean £60 tickets in the Championship. And then all of a sudden it doesn't look so good, does it? So I don't think I know anyone that would want to just straight up renew right now after seeing what we're going through. Until it looks like, hopefully, fingers crossed, touch wood, we start turning some results around.
Yeah. And it goes back to the point you're mentioning, Tej. I mean, this source that is close to the owners, allegedly, said the Lewis family recognised greater investment in salaries was needed because the finishing positions in the league correlate more closely to wages rather than transfer spending. I mean, I think I know, Tej, what you're going to say. We need actions rather than just PR guff, right?
Exactly. And to be honest, I don't want to waste your time or the panels or the viewers and the listeners with more deliberation on this nonsense. Yeah. I've said it already many times. We've all said it. None of us believe you. None of us. So stop talking. It's action. And also it is the inaction that has led us to this place. Not over 1 season, 2 seasons, 3, 5, 7, 10, you can go back again if you want to pick a point. Not that this was the first point, but it was the Poch rebuild furniture speech, right? We reached the Champions League final in 2019. It's 7 years ago. What are you doing? What are you doing when you reach the pinnacle of the promised land? And again, Tottenham for the longest time has been the most derided club in the world. That was actually proven. The most derided football club on social media is Tottenham Hotspur. So that tells you a couple of things. I'm not going to stand here and go, woe is me, poor us or whatever. It's because we are almost in this unique position where we are this huge club with a global following, really famous club with a storied history that I spoke about before. And yet we are serial underachievers. So that creates this sort of unique opportunity to make Tottenham Hotspur the butt of all of those jokes. I'm not saying that we should perform so people don't say nasty things about us on social media. Who cares? But we are serially underperforming for the club of our size. The thing is, as well, is that what really then starts to become a concern, and again, people are commenting on it, we've discussed it already, is that are we still an attractive club for young players? What's really changed as well in the Premier League over those last 5, 6 or 7 years is that all of those clubs, if you're a Premier League club, you're all flush with money. So if you're a lower kind of mid-table Premier League club, you're now in a position where you can, and they do, pay their players 150 grand a week. And so if you're a young player who's coming through and you're exciting and all that kind of thing, well, you can go to a Bournemouth or a Crystal Palace or like one of those, play 20 plus games a season and make you 150 grand a week and have a jolly old time, not be under that much pressure. And then if you do really well, one of the real big clubs will come in and take you to Chelsea or United or to Arsenal or to City or whatever it is. And then of course, your agents don't know that he's there anymore. Your agents don't have to deal with Levy, right? So this is a complex business, a multi-billion-dollar industry. So there's lots of issues just as a business, as a structure, as a conglomerate. You have to be very smart and track what's happening in the market. And we have mismanaged this club so very badly, and I believe been conceited and arrogant to say, well, we're Tottenham and so we can attract players. Well, now look where we are. We're doing a whole show about, are we going to get relegated or not? We don't have a manager. And so the time for action is now. You have to really change things because this slide could continue. Not to be negative, gang. I know a lot of people.
No, it's hard. I mean, it's hard, isn't it?
Positive, but I'm not going to sit here and talk nonsense either. Like I said, whenever I come home, man, and I run into people, they see me here in Los Angeles. Oh, TJ, I love you on Last Word, right? And so people are so very kind and so very generous to me with their time and with their spirit and with their energy. I would never be disingenuous or tell you anything that I didn't truly believe in my heart of hearts. Things can change, but it is our owners, the people that hold the purse strings, that really have to implement said change.
Yeah. What do you think, Ad, to the timing of this now coming out about the wage structure being ripped up and where we are? Because again, it comes on the week of where those season tickets are now available to buy for next season. But again, I'll ask you the same question as a fellow season ticket holder. Do you know anyone that's rushing to lock their seating for next season? I don't know whether this club's going to be in the Premier League and don't know who the manager's going to be at the moment, Ad?
No, I mean, they made a big deal about Newcastle being a Category B game. I wonder what QPR might be next season is what I'm thinking at the moment. But, look, I don't want to be disingenuous and waste everyone's time by, adding more to this because it's a non-story. It's nothing I've not heard a number of times before. But there was a comment in the chat, about 10 comments up about what about the data analysts? How's that worked out? And for me, that sums up so much about Spurs. We want to be Brentford, right? So we're now going to be like Brentford, and we're going to focus on stats, and we're going to get their manager. But it's not really being Brentford at all, is it? Because you're not bringing in a recruitment team. You're not bringing in that level of expertise. You're just sort of taking, you're trying to build a house that looks like Brentford and just nicking the wallpaper. You're not doing the foundations. You're not building any of the walls. Maybe we'll be like Brighton. Yeah, we'll try and get a young manager and do that. Until the club pick a structure and a strategy and stick to it and actually go all in for it, then you're sort of going to be floating around in the mire. And my suggestion would be act as you are as a really rich club and just start spending a bucket load of money. That's probably going to be the easiest way to build something for the future.
Buy Ferraris with Ferrari budget. Buy Ferraris.
And even if it's not the players, we've got 14 injuries. Go and get the very best doctors in sport in the world. Go and get the best scouts in the world, because you can afford them. It doesn't have to be the players, but go and get the best in class at every level. Because I think if there's one thing that annoys Spurs fans right now, it's you look at people like Vinay and Langer and Peter Chessington, World of Adventures, whatever his name is, that's coming on the board. There's no one there that strikes you as best in class. No. And again, Vinay and Levy, they offered the view that they wanted Spurs to win the league and win the Champions League. You didn't have to say that. You said it. So we're going to hold you accountable to it. And the way to do that really is by spending a bucket load of money. Go and do it. There's nothing to stop you from doing it other than a choice. Arsenal 5-6 years ago were in a position not as bad as this, but contextually they would say they were in no man's land. And all they really decided to do was, as well as building a structure, and they stumbled across the great manager, they spent a bucket load of money as a choice. And really, there'll never be a bigger inflection point for Spurs than right now this summer. What to do? I'm sorry, I'm going on. That's sort of how I feel they need to do it. Spend the money that you've got. You spent 20 years trying to be in a position to be this rich. You're there. Do it. You've done the hard bit. This should be the fun part.
It's not even just spending money for just creating a good team. You saw Arsenal spend money on players, realize actually some of them aren't that good, and then spend even more money getting better players in. Ramsdale's one. Oh, actually, he's a bit shaky. Let's get Raya. Whereas, and he's not the only one. There's so many. They brought in like Socrates. They brought in Cedric Suarez and all this.
They didn't need Mosquera or Hincapie, and both came on and played brilliantly against us on Sunday, and that is the difference.
Even
we would never have signed those players if we had good defenders.
Eze as well, isn't it? Eze as well.
When they had Erdegaard, Marino, it just was like, and we sit here and we'll sign a player and then say, right, that's it. He's our talisman for the next 10 years, and we're not going to do anything else, even if he turns out not to be as good as we hoped he did. Yeah,
I was going to get your take on the Johan Langer interview, but I think given the nature of where this conversation's going, I think I'll just scrap that. Look, I want to close on a couple of things very quickly.
Sorry, one more point on all of these players and like what real squad depth looks like is that, said before, and again, the chaps have spoken about it, we're just not a very appealing prospect. And so unless you are the kind of team that says, listen, man, we're trying to win, then you can get 2 or 3 players who will sit on the bench. We would drag ourselves over broken glass to have any of those substitutes that you guys just mentioned starting for us. I'd love Marino or Odegaard or not Odegaard, Odegaard, Mosquera or Hincapie. I'd love them. And of course, they'd walk straight into our team. So why are they going to Arsenal to sit on the bench? Because they want to be part of a potentially title-winning team. And so it really takes it takes a big shift, a lot of very big checks, and like the chaps have said, not just players. The whole thing needs to be. I talked about a reset before. Reset. Remind who's there, what this club is. Talk if they don't know the history, and why should they? Right? Why should they? Don't know the history? Teach them the history, tell them what we have done, talk about that, the impossible double. It was impossible. It couldn't be done. And we did it. That's this club. And so we can breathe that new fire and exhilaration into the people who are there. And if you're not good enough, then get rid, because it can be changed, and my goodness, it needs to be changed. And then you can get players who'll be like, I don't care if I start 3 times or if I come off the bench in the 80th minute because I want to be part of a team that's going to win things. I believe me that those players are out there.
I also think it's not even just about, you spend all the money to get the best players in the world, because realistically that's just not going to happen. You're not going to sign the current best players because we're in the bin at the moment, to put it frankly. But what you do go and do is go and sign the best youngsters that might be available.
100%.
Rayan, that's gone to Bournemouth, was there and available. You could have easily have gone in and just offered him more money compared to what Bournemouth could have offered him. It's not going to be 200 grand a week. It's probably not even going to be anywhere near 100. He's probably on something close to like 20, being as young as he is. We could offer way more than that, and then you convince the best youngsters to come. You start becoming the better of the rest. Then you build yourself back up. Arteta at Arsenal, for example, got rid of all of the big heads that were causing too many issues in Aubameyang, Ozil, Lacazette. They signed all youngsters. He brought players through the academy in Smith Rowe, Saka, signed youngsters because they were probably easier to mould into his vision, and then built from there. Then they started bringing in Declan Rice, Eze, players that were more established in the league. And that is the strategy that we just do not have as a club. We don't know what we want to be. We're in this middle ground of, we want to be the best, but then you're not going to buy the current best players. And then
or enough.
Or enough.
You go and buy one. Like people, I understand Xavi didn't have a great game against Arsenal, but he's one dude. Right? He's one guy, and also he's new to the league, and he's 5 minutes old. So you need more than that. Would Zubimendi come in and lit the league up if he doesn't have Declan Rice standing in front of him and doesn't have Martin Odegaard, who's their captain, by the way, on the bench going, I'm captain of this club. My man's just come in and robbed my spot. So it's all of those factors that will lead to, not just a player's development, but team's development. And again, it's mismanagement. It's really naive and arrogant. There's a reason why the Bournemouths and the Brightons and everything of this world, Everton, all these teams that are doing much better than us, and they're nowhere near as big or as established or as storied as us. No disrespect to them, of course, they're just not. And so it's about understanding who we are. It's a bit boring, but it is about identity, and then about applying the tools to live up to that identity.
Agree. Look, I want to close us on Fulham and in terms of how big that game is. Before we do, guys, just a reminder out there, and look, we might need him in terms of upcoming, because we've got still some Champions League games on the horizon, which we do need to enjoy, because we're not sure if it's, well, and I think it'll be Champions League next season. It might be Championship rather than Champions League. Get yourself a little breakaway. We're, of course, delighted to be sponsored by NordVPN on this show. They are still offering at the moment a discount for those that want to take yourselves away from Spurs, even if it's for a week or two or a couple of days over a weekend. You can check them out. You get 4 extra months for free on a 2-year plan. There is no risk with Nord's 30-back money guarantee. And again, you'll be supporting the podcast and doing so. NordVPN.com/LWOS. Right. We want to close on Fulham because Igor Tudor is optimistic about having Pedro Porro and Kevin Danso back available for the London derby. We've, of course, got a tricky run ahead. We then got another London derby against Palace after that. Does it feel, guys? I'll start with you, George, on this. Fulham on Sunday. We need to get something, don't we? It's not typically been recently a happy hunting ground for us there. We just need to get something, George. Is that fair? Just to try and change the mood, change the vibe. I'd love a win, but I mean, at the moment, I keep saying this. I don't want to be negative. I can't see where the next win's coming from at the moment, George. I hope it's at Fulham. I wouldn't bet on it the way we're playing, George.
Yeah, look, to be honest, I mean, at the moment, every single game's a must-win. But you feel like this one in particular, after the loss to, the heavy defeat to Arsenal, the fact that Palace is only a few days after, I believe, I think this almost becomes, it needs to be the turning stone in how we act, especially like the players on the pitch, getting the results. And look, yeah, like you said, we've not had good times there recently, and they are in form themselves. Just beating Sunderland, and Raul's doing well, Webby doing well. They've got a good few players there, and I just think there's not a single game out there for the rest of the season that's quote unquote going to be easy. It just isn't. Everything's going to be a fight. But I think what Fulham is an opportunity to start the turnaround, because Lord knows we need it. Because you can just imagine if we don't win that game, I mean, if we lose that game, the thoughts and feelings around the club is going to turn into disaster mode, especially if certain other results don't go our way.
I start worrying, George. I'm not saying you're going to feel like this or I'm going to feel like this, but I start worrying and people start thinking, oh my God, Tudor, he hasn't got any Premier League experience.
Yeah, more pressure on him.
Because I'm in this really weird scenario where I think, again, I start thinking, well, Tudor even last the end of the season? And that's not me saying he's not the right man, but you start thinking already, like we said about how good his first interview was and how he came across with the club interview and how he came across in that first press conference. And then you start to worry thinking, well, nothing would surprise me with Tottenham. Nothing would generally surprise me. Like if we don't pick up results quickly in terms of what he's been brought in for, then you worry even with that connection with the players. Again, I don't mind him coming out saying, so that you come back in there about the fact there's bad habits. I think we know there's bad habits, but he's got to still have the players on side to then get results. You also worry about how far do he kind of tread on that line of things. I mean,
yeah, he's got to get it out of them as well, because at the end of the day, they've suffered. I say they suffered as in they've made us suffer a lot this season, but it's almost too used to losing a lot. And I think he needs to stop the bad habits. I think he needs to almost motivate them to say that you clearly are better than this from what you're doing. And look, how many times have we seen in this league teams that are quote unquote not good, bottom of the table, yet these teams seem to get results against bigger clubs all the time. And that's the unpredictability of football. And I think where their quality may differ is made up for in how they fight for matches. Bodo Glimt against Inter Milan today is just a prime example of that, where really and truly Bodo Glimt shouldn't be anywhere near the level of Inter Milan. But the way they might press a team, the way they play aggressive football, the way that they can overcome teams like that. Brentford against Arsenal, Wolves against Arsenal. It's them being aggressive and taking the game to the teams is the difference. And that's going to fall on Tudor to sort of motivate these players to believe that actually you can get results against these teams because you are better than what you've been showing. And yeah, ultimately it's just going to come down to him to get that belief back into the players. And we're just not going to know whether we can do that or not until we see on Sunday.
Agree. Teach, Fulham, Sunday, massive game. Like I said to Jules there, I'd love to sit here and say we're going to go there and win.
Sure.
But I feel like we need to go there and get something, don't we? Just to try and give us some kind of genuine hope.
Yes. I mean, we need, again, no great sage saying we need points. We really need points wherever and however we can get them. What I'd like to see, I mean, listen, man, I think Fulham are a good side and they got a bunch of players that I really like that Harry Wilson for ages.
Yeah, very good player.
When you spot those players, just like, how are we? Anyway, I don't want to do that, but they've got a lot of really exciting players who can hurt us. And so to Adam's point that he made earlier that I concur with, let's play our players in the positions in which they are most effective. Let's see if we can create chances. Let's play Dom and Kolo Muani up front. Let's do that. Let's do a 3-5-2. Let's pack that midfield. Let's put Palhinha playing at his old club in a position where he can really offer some security. And let's see if we can put some goals into, let's see if we can put the ball in the back of the net more than a couple of times. And if we concede 2, then we can still either come away with a point or maybe 3. It'll be a tough game, but what I wanted to see in the Arsenal game that I didn't see was the fight and the energy. Again, not to be that guy or too old-fashioned, but I promise you, as in life, maximum effort and energy and exuberance will earn you success. It really will. And so just go there with no fear and go there with some pride and with some passion and just make it very difficult for them. That's all I'm looking for, Rick. As far as the results, who knows, brother? But please show us something that we can walk away from and go, okay, well, I can see what the manager's trying to do. Look at the wand that Michael Carrick has waved over Manchester United. If we could have just a smattering of that, I would be happy with that after 2 games in charge. Thanks for having me back on, mates. To the viewers and the listeners, my thanks and my gratitude to you as ever. to George, to Adam. Lovely to be on the show with you boys. If you haven't already hit like and subscribe and all that kind of thing, please do that for Ricky, man. He works so hard. He's a lovely man, obviously Spurs through and through. So please do that, viewers and listeners. And I shall see you next time. Lots of love. Thank you.
You're a star. I've got Johnny's voice going through my head as he says this. You know, we've John, I know Johnny's in the background somewhere. I can actually hear him at times.
My manager is checking my loan performances. This is outrageous behaviour from the gaffer.
This is where we're at now, isn't it? It's such a data-led approach that we've got. Even the guests are being looked into the background. See, Tottenham, this is what you should be doing. Like Johnny says here, we've conceded 2+ goals in our last 7 Premier League matches. We've never gone 8 in a row in the Premier League. You cannot expect to get anything if you're conceding twice every week. Amen to that, Johnny. I agree. Echo of glory, of course. And you said that very interesting when you opened the show. You said, obviously, Tudor had 5 days to work with the players. He would have seen the Arsenal display. And in terms of what he saw about making changes, he doesn't want to make the same mistakes against Fulham. So on that basis, with a limited squad, can he really change much? Is there much he can change in terms of personnel? He might have potentially Danto and Porro back, but even then, it's still limited in terms of what else he can do, right?
Yeah, look, I mean, ultimately, he has to apportion where it's worth taking a risk and where it isn't. And for me, playing with 2 forward players and 9 defenders is just as much of a risk in terms of how are you going to win the game as it is in being too cavalier, which obviously we all moaned about last year. Now, for me, if you play Sousa, for example, as a left wing back, yes, you could say that's a huge risk. But what if we can't get the ball forward because we've got Spence playing left wing back again? It makes you might be as unlikely to win the game. So there's part of me that just thinks, when I said about trying to go out and win the game, you know, let's say Porro isn't available, and worst case scenario, Porro is not available. I still think I'd probably try and play Spence on the right, Sousa on the left, and 2 strikers, and just try and get the ball in the box 25 times when people are in their natural positions that can cross it, and just get the ball in the box and see what happens. Because we technically played our most risk-averse team on Sunday against Arsenal, but we couldn't move the ball. And we lost at least 1 goal, if not 2, by giving the ball away in bad areas that led to them scoring because we couldn't get the ball forward. That, for me, is as much of a risk as maybe sticking a kid in at left wing back and saying to Van De Ven, look, you're our best player and captain. We're going to need you to do a bit more work defensive on the left-hand side to cover for this kid. But with a bit of luck, if you can give him the ball twice, or if when Simmons picks the ball up in midfield and looks up, instead of just seeing 8 opposition shirts around him, he's got an option out left. He's got an option out wide to the right, because we need to win the game. And I just think that approaching it in a not lose mentality is not going to bear any more fruit necessarily than just putting as many round pegs and round holes as you've got and hoping that works for you. Nothing else has worked. So we might as well try something different.
Yeah, I think he will get... Look, I think what we've all said at the start of the show, Arsenal, you can't really judge him on the Arsenal game. I don't think it's right to judge Tudor on that, but 100%, it does feel like a massive week for Spurs, because this time next week, we've played, with all due respect, you know, Palace and Fulham. You know, these are the games that normally you would think Tottenham would get points at. So if we're sitting here, we haven't picked up anything. This is not me to say sack him now, but I think there will be genuine concerns about the fact, you know, where he's been, George. Is it fair to say he's gone and made an immediate effect at teams? And then you're thinking, well, we need to get results, George. Is that fair? I mean, I look at Tudor. I like what he says. I've got no issue with him at the moment, but, you know, he's been brought in to make an immediate effect, and you start to worry and then concern yourself. Well, if it's not going to come instantly, then how late do you leave it, George? You see where I'm coming from? Is that unfair to be thinking like that? I just think it's Tottenham. It's crazy, but this is what you get sucked into.
Yeah, I think the problem is, where do you go from that, really?
I agree.
If you were to say he doesn't win the first 3 games or whatever, to your example, who do you turn to? Who's the next option? So I think you almost have to give him the time and just pray that
100%.
Players come back from injuries, because then we all know we're missing players like Kudus badly. I think, to be honest with you, I think not having Solanke start that game on Sunday was killer, because I think since he's come back from injury, I think he's made the biggest difference to our front line. I think we score goals better when he's in the team, because one, he's actually a forward that knows how to hold the ball up for a start, and two, I think he just is the best finisher that we have at the club with us right now. So for him being ill for whatever reason and then coming on during the game as we're losing, it's obviously a tough ask of him. So I'm hoping that he's had a good week of training to be able to be fit and ready. And I agree with everything with Adam saying. I think he just needs players that can play in their natural positions. If you don't have a left-footed left back, especially left wing back, with the way we're playing in the system, you're relying on your left wing back and right wing back to be attacking. That's what we've seen throughout his whole time as managers in other teams. The left wing back, right wing back, they all join going forward. And I think if you have someone that's right-footed, and we saw these issues under Frank, even when he was just playing left back, when Spence was playing left back, for example, as much as I think he's still a brilliant defender, he hinders us going forward because he can't naturally get the ball into an attacking position on the left side, cross the ball into the dangerous area. So we become predictable. We become far too predictable. So, look, it's going to be a test in a few weeks for sure. I think we just need to hope that, one, players like Solanke can make the big difference. We do need to gamble on playing some younger players, even if it's not Sousa, even if it's just youth players. Byfield, I think Byfield in his appearances that he's shown in the Champions League showed to be far beyond his years. And I think we need to start using our academy more, because I personally would much rather have a younger player, even if they're unproven, a younger player who is there to prove a point that they can handle the big leagues and be with the players. They're not set in stone in this belief that, we're not good enough. We've lost games, this, that, and the other, because they've been playing the PL2 for most of the season. And I think they're going to want to make that next step up to the first team. And someone like a Luca Williams-Barnett, someone like a Byfield, who have shown that they clearly have the technical abilities, give them the chance. I think teams like Wolves, just as an example for Wolves, they're forced to play some of these youngsters because they don't have the resources. Mane's come through, and in the last few weeks has looked like one of the most informed players in the league. And that's an 18-year-old in a team in a player that's 20th, and they've actually managed to get a couple of big results, like the draw against Arsenal. So I think we might be forced into the situation where we will need to look at our academy more, because I think they've got more beliefs in themselves and their abilities than some of the first teamers right now.
Well, listen, we have to cross that bridge when we come to it. Guys, the counselling session is over. You are free to return to your lives outside of Tottenham for now. I want to say a massive thank you to TJ Ramini, who's got sunny California to cheer him up. He could even enjoy that for the next few days before Tottenham enters his life. T, thank you so much. Thank you to the superb George Achiilea. George, you've been a diamond. Thank you. And thank you to returning Adam Nathan, who I told Adam I would leave him alone. It didn't even get to a month. I'm so sorry. And thank you. You can hear his dulcet tones on Echo of Glory. Always on a Monday, Ad, isn't it? Forgive me, Monday. A Monday?
Monday, and then either Thursday or Friday normally, particularly if there's a midweek game to pontificate about.
Yes, the joy of having a midweek game in there. So it's twice a week, unless I'm calling him up in a crisis. My thanks to these wonderful guests. Thank you to the audience, over 7,000, 8,000, 9,000 that have been with us live for this one. We appreciate your support from George, from TJ, from Adam, from me. We have been the last word on Spurs. Keep safe, keep well, and we're back with you before you know it. Take care, and come on, you Spurs.